Hello and a very warm welcome to the Entrepreneurial Edge. I'm Chris Bishop and I'm looking forward to this program very much. Now, raising capital and indeed managing capital in these uncertain times can be difficult. It can hold its successes and also its disappointments and problems. It is surely a tough business for an entrepreneur. Even tougher, surely, if you're far from home. Now, this is part of the story of entrepreneur William Jimerson, who grew up in Mississippi in the United States and came to Africa to found a capital company, Musa Capital. Before I chat to him, let's just have a look at behind the scenes at Musa Capital.
Musa Capital is a boutique merchant banking firm with experience in private equity investing, property development, structured finance, and investment banking advisory services. The organization was founded back in 1995.
Musa is a Pan-African private equity investment manager, and it was founded as far back as 1995, so they've got about 15, 17 years worth of track record in the investment advisory space. It focuses mainly on the African markets with a specific focus on sub-Saharan Africa.
Musa invests in established growth phase companies who require expansion capital to fuel their business models.
We generally back entrepreneurs that have great ideas and have a proven track record. We back small businesses that are viable and need that extra leg up to actually make it to the next level. So we come in with the funding, we come in with the executional support, we go in and provide operational support to the management of the firm to actually help them reach their goals and milestones. So essentially we go for mid-cap sized businesses that are already in business. We generally don't invest in startups and just need that extra additional capital to either expand or develop a new product line.
Modula Mafolo added that one of their main strategies is to look at synergies between their investees and their suppliers.
And the strategy is for Musa to actually partner with public and private financial institutions to make funding accessible to the micro businesses that are supplying into our investees. And the plan really is to actually provide capacity building to these micro suppliers below our investee level, so that the success of our investees actually cascades down to the suppliers below them.
Musa has 3 funds which all focus on the sub-Saharan African markets.
In our current fund, our main focus has been in the SADC region, but there's plans underway to actually expand our activities into East and West Africa with specific focus in countries like Malawi, Zambia, and within the southern region there's a lot of activity in Zimbabwe as well. So it's going to definitely be a pan-African investment approach in the current fund that we're raising.
Well, with me in the studio, I have the man himself, William Jimerson, the co-founder of Musa Capital. Welcome. Now, William, you're from the deep south, Meridian, Mississippi. I mean, we get fed a lot of stories on Hollywood about what Mississippi's like. You grew up there. How tough was it?
Mississippi is a challenging environment. It was in the 70s when I was born and grew up, and probably even more so today. It ranks last in most things, except for poverty. It's #1 in that. Poverty both from an economic perspective as well as social infrastructure and education. So not an easy environment to make it to where I am today, but I had support. And
you were brought up by your grandparents until the age of 9. Were they entrepreneurs? Did they inspire you at all?
They did inspire me considerably. Unfortunately, my grandfather had a 4th grade education. He was a military man, and after he left the military, a hustler of sorts, if you will. He always made a plan and starting little small businesses, be it fixing cars or what have you. So suppose that spirit was there. My grandmother, 6th grade education, and I watched my grandmother, by the time I turned about eight years old or so, go back and get her high school degree. And so that drive, the determination to never say no, that there's always an answer, it did come from them.
And your mother took over your upbringing at the age of 9, and you were saying that in the 70s, she was teaching you computers, which would have been unheard of in most places in the world, let alone Mississippi.
First of all, the fact that, thinking back on it, the fact that Mississippi actually had computers that were operable in the 70s is a feat in of itself. But again, my grandmother is very clear. Nothing that they can take away from you about your education. No matter what environment you're born into, your education means everything, particularly in a place like the States.
But that wasn't it, though. I mean, as you grew up, a lot of your peers in Mississippi, some of them didn't work out well. I mean, what was the odds for you making it?
No, look, I mean, you'll see it in a number of documentaries these days that for an African-American male born anytime between 1970 and 1980, the odds of going to university and ending up in the penal system, in prison, was 50-50. You literally could toss a coin. And I would argue that in Mississippi, it was probably more like 75-25.
And your grandfather's influence, there was no idea of going to the military or anything like that?
No, not at all. Because my grandparents did it for my mother and her sisters. They ensured that each one of those girls went to college and got a university degree. And my mother a master's. Both of my aunt, all of them, masters. My youngest aunt, a lieutenant colonel in the service as well. So always about excellence and doing better. So when I went to live with my mother, she just picked up from where my grandmother and my grandfather left off.
And you went on to college to study. What did you choose to study in the end?
Well, look, going back to my grandmother's thesis, that it's all about education. So I researched very clearly what would give me the best opportunity within that educational sphere. And in the States, which was at least the case back in the 80s, it's all about math and science, all about technology. So my mother made sure I went to the best math and science high school in Atlanta, Georgia. It actually was one of the top 3 in all the United States of public schools. You know, as much as free education is looked down upon in the States, it was one of the best. That prepared me. I was the best there, one of the best at least. It prepared me for a career at university at MIT.
And during your holidays, you went to work at Microsoft and sat next to Bill Gates.
It was a tremendous opportunity, and you know, again, going back to the education, being prepared, the opportunities will present themselves. So I had the blessing of having a summer internship between my junior and my sophomore year at MIT of interning at Microsoft for a summer. And he would take the 7 or 8 interns that were part of the program and have one-on-one chats with us.
Mm-hmm. You know. What did you learn from him?
Probably one of the most important things, beyond how to program Microsoft DOS, which most people don't know. People think Microsoft is built on Windows. It was built on an operating system called DOS with the little blinking light.
I can just about remember it.
Exactly. We're dating ourselves. It wasn't that at all. What I remember very vividly what Bill said to me that evening. He said, the best thing that's ever happened to me is I was born in the United States of America. He left out the fact of being born rich in the United States of America. But what it said to me, though, it was about opportunity.
Well, given how tough you said it was in Mississippi, would you agree with him?
Absolutely. Relatively now, seeing the globe, I got on my first international plane trip at the age of 22. I started my career in investment banking on Wall Street at Merrill Lynch. And then it was just to London. But as I got older and had more opportunity to see the world, and certainly by the time I made it to Africa in 1995, there are a lot worse places on the planet than Mississippi.
So fast forward then, you started earning an honest crust in Wall Street. It must have been still a minority there of young emerging black traders. But then you decided to 2 things, one to be an entrepreneur and one to come to Africa. Now you told me it was passion. Just describe.
It was passion. It was passion that made me decide to leave Merrill Lynch. Actually, I left Merrill Lynch. I was in a 2-year program, analyst program there that was designed to 2 years there, and then you go back to business school. And I had the fortune of, before I left MIT, I was admitted to MIT's business school, Sloan School. So I had a guaranteed admittance no matter what. Maybe because I had that safety net, I said to myself, what's next? And I had the blessing again, opportunity. One of the chief operating officer of a business called 9X Mobile, which is the kind of telecom equivalent of New York State, invited me to be a CFO at 26 years old. And so for me, another opportunity. Now I began to understand what it means to be an entrepreneur.
Well, just go back to this passion for Africa. I mean, before you came to live and work here, I mean, how much did you know? I mean, one of the old cliches about Americans, people say, oh, they don't know much about other parts of the world. How much did you know?
Very little, Chris. Very, very little. And at the time, had you asked me that, you know, circa 1994, 1993, I'd have called myself a Pan-Africanist, right? Someone who studied and learned it in African studies. At MIT, I did a minor down the street at Harvard in African studies under Louis Gates. But ultimately, I knew very little. Once I got here and saw it for myself, very little.
Do you think, I mean, one thing that does interest me is the fact that, I mean, I've been reporting on this continent for 20 years. I've met Dutch businessmen, Germans, I've met Chinese businessmen, all of that. I haven't met that many African Americans doing business here. Why do you think that is? Well,
ignorance goes back to education. All right, we, as African Americans, we are a minority in the United States of America. And as a minority, we typically have the bottom of everything, including education and access. So there was no summers traveling to Europe or traveling to Africa. There was no field trips overseas. Even exposure to the global mentality was something that was not readily accessible for most people from where I was from in Meridian, Mississippi. So it's ignorance. But it's still a thirst. And why? Because probably maybe from just basics of our culture, where we are and who we're from Africa. And a lot of the traditions that we practice in the States are just adaptations from what we came from here. So there's a natural curiosity. And that's, I think, frankly, that's where before I had the passion, I had the curiosity. And it was the curiosity that made me seek out the information and the knowledge. And once I had the knowledge, that created the passion.
So we're going to talk a little bit after the break how you started your business in Africa, but just tell us about that first ever visit. I mean, you flew in, what happened?
It was summertime here, or maybe late fall in 1995. I landed first out of London into Harare, and I may be timing my seasons wrong, but the jacaranda, I remember very clearly at the Miko's Hotel, there was the avenue of jacaranda that were in full bloom and blossom, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing on the planet. I had breakfast at the Miko's Hotel for the equivalent of $3 US, and I couldn't finish it, with fruit and cassava and juices and so forth. I was at home.
So you decided then, I mean, very briefly, to come and put your roots down here.
Then it was, when I first came here, we were seeking. We were looking for opportunity. We'd just been seeded by an African, a Zimbabwean, who believed in us, believed in our passion and our vision. He seeded us with a very meager amount relative to today's terms to go and seek out that opportunity and make it real. And so the path was always to be here, but we had to create the opportunity.
Okay, well, we'll talk more after the break, how you actually got the funding to start your business, which involves a tale about a multi-millionaire and an airplane hangar, which I can't wait for. We're going to a short commercial break. When we return, we take a look at one of Musa's success stories and also some of the problems they faced.